Hey kids, it's me again. Okay, so this is the lecture video for week 7 lecture slides. Alright, so kumusta? Kumusta ang annuities? Okay, so don't worry, this topic is more relaxed compared to annuities. Mas madali ang topic na ito. Okay, so ano ba ang mga i-discuss natin for this lecture video? We have this. We are going to have yield rates and reinvestment rates. Okay? Actually, itong yield rates, meron na nito sa mga problems na sinasolve natin. Hindi lang natin siya formally dinedefine. But here in this lecture video, we're going to formally introduce what yield rates are. Okay? And how reinvestment rates affect the yield rate. So before we can formally define what yield rates are, we have to discuss muna this discounted cash flow analysis. Okay, ano nga ba ito? So basically, it is an extension of the study of annuities. Recall, what are annuities? An annuity is a series of payments, made at equal intervals of time. And these payments can be level or non-level, diba? So level, so we have equal payments, diba? Made at equal intervals of time, and then it can also be non-level, pero yung pagiging non-level niya may pattern, diba? Arithmetically or geometrically. Here, in the discounted cash flow analysis, walang pattern ang payments. Okay, so iba-iba talaga ang payment amounts. Discounted, ibig sabihin lang nito, you're going to carry all the payments to time zero usually. So you're going to value or get the value of the money of the payments, the value of the payments at time zero. Okay, to start this cash flow analysis, let's define C sub 0 up to C sub n. So they are the deposits or contributions into an investment. Okay? They can be positive or negative. So anong ibig sabihin kapag positive ang C sub t? Means there is a net cash flow into the investment. So ito yung cash inflow. May pumasok na pera sa investment fund. Okay? So it's a positive. Alright? Tapos, kapag negative naman ang C sub t, there's a net cash outflow. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, may lumabas na pera sa investment fund. Okay? So, ang dali lang intindihan, di ba? It's easy to understand, right? Okay. This is the viewpoint of the investment fund. Okay? Ito ay sa pananaw ng investment fund. So, kapag may pumasok na pera sa kanya, it's a positive sa viewpoint niya. Kapag may lumabas na pera sa kanya, dun sa investment fund, it's a negative for that investment fund. Ngayon, tingnan natin ang viewpoint ng investor. Okay? Kapag yung investor naglagay ng amount sa investment fund, so you imagine the investment fund's viewpoint. Kapag may perang lumabas, pag may perang pumasok doon sa investment fund, positive sa kanya yon. Pero saan ba nanggaling yung perang pumasok sa investment fund? Kay investor, right? So si investor naglabas ng pera. So ibig sabihin, kapag lumabas na pera dun sa investor, negative sa kanya yon. Pero yung nilabas niyang perang yon, pumasok kay investment fund. So yung perang yon, positive naman kay investment fund's point of view. Okay? So that's why if we consider the investor's point of view, we have this. Okay, I'm going to use another letter here. Let's say R sub t. So R sub t is equal to the negative of C sub t. This is taking the viewpoint of the investor. Yeah? Ibig sabihin lang nito, kung positive siya sa investment fund's point of view, baliktad naman ang nangyayari kay investor. Diba? You imagine, kapag negative ang C sub T. Ibig sabihin, may lumabas na pera sa investment. So, kaya may lumabas na pera sa investment fund because nag-withdraw itong si investor. So, kapag nag-withdraw si investor, so negative yan kay investment fund kasi nabawasan yung pera. But, ang effect niyan kay investor ay positive kasi may papasok na pera kay investor. Okay? So, negative sa investment fund kasi lumabas yung pera, pero positive naman kay investor kasi yung lumabas na pera kay investment fund ay pumasok sa kanya. Kaya positive. So, that's why we have this relationship. R sub T is simply the negative of the C sub T's. Alright? Okay. Take note this, a deposit and a withdrawal may happen at the same time. Okay? Actually, I have an example on the next slide. To draw the time diagram for this example, I'm going to use the investor's point of view. Okay? So, si investor ang bida dito. So, kapag lumabas ang pera sa kanya, I'm going to consider a negative amount of money. Pag pumasok naman ang pera sa kanya, it's a positive amount of money. Okay? So, this is the time diagram para sa mga perang lumabas kay investor. Okay? So, let us read the problem. So, we have here a 5-year investment project and the investor contributes 10,000 at the beginning of first year, 5,000 at the beginning of the second year. So, ibig sabihin, nag-contribute, lumabas ang mga perang ito. So, that's why we have a negative 10,000 at time 0 because this is the beginning of first year and negative 5,000 at time 1 because this is the beginning of the second year. Okay. What about these 3 negative 1,000s here? Saan ano sila? Ito yung mga maintenance expenses incurred during this 5-year investment project. Okay? Siyempre, sinong magbabayad niyan? Yung investor pa din. Diba? So, that's why ito ay mga perang lumabas pa rin kay investor. So, that's why we have negative 1,000 at time 2, time 3, and time 4. Okay? Kasi sila ay at the beginning of each remaining year thereafter na incur. Okay? Hanggang time 4 lang because ito ay beginning of the 5th year. Okay? Alright. So, ano naman kaya yung papasok na pera kay investor? Ito naman yung timeline niyan. Sabi kasi dito, the project is expected to provide an investment return of 10,000 at the end of each year for the last 3 years of the project. So, this is the end of the 5th year, this is the end of the 4th year, and this is the end of the 3rd year. Alright? So, ito yung tatlong 10,000. Okay? So, yan yung cash flows dito sa investment project na ito. Okay? We can also write this cash flows in a table. Ganito ang itsura niyan. Okay? So, here are the deposits. Okay? And then here are the withdrawals. So, the combination of deposits and withdrawals, we will call it net R sub T. So again, we are considering the viewpoint of the investor. That's why the deposit of 10,000 here is negative 10,000. Okay? Because lumabas itong pera kay investor. Okay? And so on. For time 3, you have a deposit of 1,000 and there is a withdrawal of 10,000. So, if you combine this is a negative 1,000 and this is positive 10,000, you will get 9,000. Right? This is again taking the viewpoint of the investor. So, ito ang mga values ng R sub T. Okay? So, ganyan kumuha ng R sub T kapag nangyayari ang deposit at saka withdrawal at the same time. Ito na itsura ng timeline yan. So parang kinumbine ko yung two timelines kanina into one time diagram. Okay? Or ito, kinonsider ko tong table na to and then sinulat ko siya sa isang timeline. Okay? So before we define yield rate, we need to define the net present value. So here we assume a constant rate of interest and it is equal to I. So this is the definition of the net present value. It is basically getting the present value of the R sub t's. Ganun lang. Okay? Kaya nga siya tinawag na discounted cash flow analysis. Okay? Yung cash flow, ipe-present value nyo lang. Okay? Yung lahat ng cash flows. Okay? So that's our net present value. If we go back to this time diagram and we want to get the net present value, according to the definition, P of I, which is the net present value at or using I as the rate of interest, all you have to do is to get the present value of all the R sub t's. So basically, bubuhatin mo lang lahat ng amounts na ito to times 0. So that's why you have negative 10,000, negative 5,000 V, negative 1,000 V squared, 9,000 V cube, and then another 9,000, but this time times V raised to 4, and then finally you have 10,000 V raised to 5. All right? That's how you get the net present value. That's why you have this. Okay? So kapag pinahanap ko ang net present value, ganyan nyo lang siya hahanapin. Okay, so this is the formal definition of yield rate. So you equate now the net present value here to 0. Yeah. And then the value of I that will make this true is called the yield rate. Yeah. Okay. So mamaya ipapakita ko sa inyo na ginagawa na natin ito or ginagamit na natin ang yield rate sa mga previous problems natin. Okay. Take this note. The yield rate, so aside from this definition na the value of I that will make P of I, the net present value, equal to 0, yun daw yung yield rate. Also this. The yield rate is that rate of interest at which the present value of contributions into the investment is equal to the present value of returns or withdrawals from the investment. So kung titingnan ninyo, ito yung equation of value natin. Do you still recall kung ano yung equation of value? Value ng perang papasok sa'yo equals value ng perang lalabas sa'yo. Of course, do you have to value those money or those amounts at the same valuation date or comparison date? Okay? So kung ano yung I, interest rate na ginamit nyo doon sa equation of value, yun din ang tinatawag na yield rate. Okay? O, tingnan ninyo. If we go back to our previous example, the 5-year investment project, we can solve for the yield rate using equation of values or equation of present values. Ganyan lang siya. Ito yung perang lalabas kay investor. Right? Valued at time 0. Okay? The other side of the equation shows the amounts or present values ng mga amounts na papasok naman kay investor. Right? So, ito ay very clear na equation of value. Perang lalabas, the left side of the equation, equals perang papasok, the right side of the equation. Okay? And then if you make one side equal to 0, you're going to have this. This is exactly your P of I, the net present value, equated to 0. O, diba? If you go back to our definition of yield rate, P of I is equal to 0. The value of I here is what you call the yield rate. So, yung I na nandito, sa mga V dito, yun ang tinatawag na yield rate. Okay? More notes on the yield rate. Okay? So, you may use internal rate of return instead of yield rate. Okay? So, other term lang yan for the yield rate. Okay? So, saan ba ginagamit ang yield rate? So, sabi dito, it will tell you how favorable or unfavorable a particular transaction may be. Paano? For example, if you are the investor, kasi kapag ikaw yung investor, ikaw yung maglalabas ng pera. So, you are the lender. Okay? If you are the lender, you want a higher yield rate. Kasi ibig sabihin, mas mataas yung perang babalik sa'yo. Diba? Yun yung favorable sa'yo as an investor. Right? Pero kung ikaw yung nanghiram ng pera, you are the borrower, syempre gusto mo ba mas malaki yung ibabayad mo? Hindi, di ba? So, a lower yield rate is favorable. Okay? So, depende kung nasaang perspective ka. Okay? Next. The yield rate need not be positive. Yes, it is very true. Okay? Hindi naman palaging, hindi palaging maganda ang isang investment. Okay? It can be 0. Yield rate can be 0. Anong ibig sabihin nun kapag ang yield rate ay 0? Ibig sabihin, hindi ka nag-earn sa investment mo. Walang gain sa investment mo. Para ka lang naghulog ng pera sa piggy bank. Diba? Wala. Hindi magbabago ang pera mo. Hindi nagbago. Okay? Yan. So, the investor receives no return from his or her investment. Okay? Pwede bang mag-negative ang yield rate? Yes. Okay? Ano naman ang ibig sabihin kapag negative ang yield rate? Ibig sabihin, meron ka ng loss doon sa investment mo. Ibig sabihin, kung 1,000 pesos ang ininvest mo, hindi na siya 1,000. Mas mababa na sa 1,000 pesos ang value ng pera mo. Okay? So, ganun talaga ang investment. So, again, when the yield rate is negative, the lender loses money in the investment. All right? Last note. Yield rate need not be unique. Let me give you an example or a problem where the computed yield rate is not unique. Let's have this problem. Okay? So this person is making payments of 100 immediately. So that means today and 132 at the end of 2 years. So let's consider A. Reith as the investor. So may lumabas na pera sa kanya. 100 at time 0 and 132 at time 2. Ngayon, ang matatanggap niyang pera is 230 at time 1. So let's have this time diagram. So instead of writing 100 as negative 100, 132 as negative 132, ang ginawa ko na lang, binaks ko na lang itong positive amount. Ito yung perang papasok kay investor. Okay? Okay. Walang question. Pero ang tanong talaga dito, find the yield rate. Alright? Okay, let's find the yield rate. So, let's establish muna the net present value. Again, it's the summation of the present values of the R sub T's. So, ito ang itsura niya. So, our net present value is equal to that one. Negative 100, okay? And then positive 230 times V, because that's the value of that amount at time 0. And then finally, you have a negative 132 V squared. Okay? Kasi you have to carry all the amounts to times 0. Okay? So to find the yield rate, we equate this to 0. Right? And using your vast knowledge in algebra, I think, di ba? Factoring. Okay? So you do it, you'll find the values of V. Okay? So V is equal to 10 over 11 and V is equal to, or V is equal to 5 over 6. So we try to compute for I. So we know that V is equal to 1 plus I raised to negative 1. Using that, we can compute for the values of I. So I is equal to 1 over 10 or I is equal to 1 over 5. You see, hindi unique ang computed yield rates. Now, the question is, when is yield rate unique? Okay? Meron dalawang situation na the computed yield rate is unique. Ito yon. First one, the yield rate is unique when all the cash flows in one direction are made before the cash flows in the other direction are made. Anong ibig sabihin nito? Ibig sabihin nito, yung isang direction, ibig sabihin, lahat muna, sige, let's take the viewpoint of the investor. So, kumbaga, lahat muna, naglalagay muna si investor ng pera kay investment fund. Okay? Walang withdrawals muna, puro deposits. Okay? So, naglalagay lang ng pera si investor kay investment fund. After nun, after some periods of time, mangyayari naman yung withdrawals. Okay? So, ganun yun. Walang mangyayari in between. Parang deposit, then withdrawal, deposit, then withdrawal. Hindi ganon. Parang deposits muna, and then after that, saka magkakaroon ng withdrawals. Okay? So, mathematically, let's say we have some k between 0 to n. N is the term of the investment. Okay? And then, sabi ito, R sub t is less than or equal to 0 for t equal to 0 to k. So, ibig sabihin, negative ito in the viewpoint of the investor. Ibig sabihin, lumalabas ang pera kay investor. So, yun nga, naglalagay muna siya kay investment fund. Tapos, yan na. After k, ito, after k, and for the rest of the life of the fund, positive na ang R sub t. Or equal to 0. Ibig sabihin ng equal to 0, hindi nag-withdraw si investor. Okay? Pero pag greater than 0, ibig sabihin may pumasok na pera kay investor, ibig sabihin no, nag-withdraw na siya from the investment fund. So ganito ang itsura nung cash flows in one direction are made before the cash flows in the other direction are made. Ito yung basic or mas normal na nangyayari. Siyempre, mag-i-invest ka muna bago mo i-reap yung mga earnings mo, di ba? Hindi pwedeng ito muna unahin yung positive yung R sub T's. Okay? Ito yung usual na scenario. Okay? Kaya ito yung kinonsider ko. Ngayon, paano ito mapapatunayan na unique nga ang yield rate? Okay? Again, how do we compute for the yield rate? Di ba? We equate the net present value to 0. Your P of I, right? You recall your P of I. Your P of I is the summation of your R sub T, V to the T for all T, right? Okay? Yung summation na yon, i-equate ninyo sa 0, right? Okay. And then, by the Descartes rule of signs, okay? So, kapag tiningnan ninyo, it's a polynomial. Right? It's a polynomial. Tapos, there's only one change in the sign. Di ba? Kasi ang mangyayari, negative, 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 and then positive, lahat na positive. So, may isa lang change in sign dun sa polynomial. Ibig sabihin nun, there exists at most one positive real root. Okay? So, meron lang, ibig sabihin ito, meron lang isang yield rate tayo na makukompute. Okay? Okay. So, kapag ganyan, ang itsura ng problem, you will have a unique yield rate. Okay? Another situation na unique ang yield rate na makukompute is this one. Kapag daw ang outstanding investment balance for the entire investment period is positive. Okay? So, ang proof nito ay nasa book. I will not prove this anymore, but I will give you an idea kung ano ba yung outstanding investment balance. Okay? Let me show you how to compute for outstanding investment balances. Okay, at different periods. Let's consider this time diagram. Okay, so this is the investment period from 0 to N. Okay, tapos yung mga B's, ito yung investment balance. Parang ito yung laman ng investment ninyo at this point. Okay, sa bawat point. Okay, so paano nga ba nahanap ang investment balance? Of course, your B sub 0, that's the contribution at time 0. Right? Ito. So, yung laman ng fund mo sa time 0 ay equal do sa magkano ba ang initial deposit. Diba? Now, how do we compute for B sub 1? Well, ganito lang yon. Okay? The investment balance at time 1 is equal to the accumulated value of B sub 0. So lang yan, i-accumulate mo to si B sub 0 ng 1 period. So that's simply multiplying it by 1 plus I plus this deposit or contributions. Okay? Ganun lang. Okay? And then for B sub 2, you accumulate B sub 1 to time 2 plus any contributions made at time 2. Okay? So, ganun lang. Ganun lang mag-compute ng investment balance. Okay, and then we have B sub n minus 1. And then finally, we have the outstanding investment balance at time n. Okay? Actually, we can substitute here. Like, itong B sub n minus 1 here, you can replace it by, kasi alam naman ninyo na B sub n minus 1 is equal to this one. Okay? So, you may want to replace B sub n minus 1 by B sub n minus 2 times 1 plus I plus C sub n minus 1. Okay? After that substitution, pwede nyo rin palitan si B sub n minus 2. Okay? Tapos magkakaroon ka ng B sub n minus 3. Papalitan mo rin yon. Actually, ang magiging itsura by successive substitution, ito. Okay? O, bakit equal sa 0? Why B sub n is equal to 0? Because ito na yung end ng investment period. Okay? Ito na yung time na totally kukunin na ni investor yung investment niya. Ipo-pull out niya na lahat ng amount na nandoon sa fund. So that's why the outstanding investment balance at time end is 0. Okay? Pull out na lahat ng investment. Alright? By the end of the investment period.